Hi everyone.
Hi.
James Brown. Hello.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So uh, uh, so let's first Bowen, hello, and Nigel, hello. Nice to have you back. Can you help me to get Nigel? Nigel? I think he can hear me. I hope.
Maybe.
Yeah. And hello, Tor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hey.
Okay, good. Most of you are on mute, but it's okay. So can you have a look? Sorry. First is that there is a bit of a review article posted on community.tokenscript.org. For those who didn't participate the weekend, the TokenScript weekly meeting during Christmas. The good news is we didn't make any much progress on these Christmas ones. We basically review and consolidate what we already know. So you're not missing much. Have a look at community.tokenscript.org, and there is a weekly design meeting weekly design meeting link. And if anyone found that link, can you please share the link, because I am on my computer and I'm speaking to my tablet. Yeah. So it would be great if you help me find the link and share. And in the meanwhile, yeah, actually, I should be able to do
this one, right?
Yeah, just share it and let me see.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So this is a bit of a review of what we have discussed in the previous meetings, and which themselves are a review of what we have discussed in the meetings in 2019. So today's agenda is more about a data object, continuing from the data object being used in attestation, extending the use of data object in other parts of TokenScript. The actual code is here. TokenScript. Sorry, Alpha Wallet. And I'm going to find a link for you to look at the extensive use of the data object. GitHub. Sorry, I'm a bit slow because I'm on my tablet. Alpha Wallet. Okay, I found the link. Okay, can you all open the link? 2020-01.
Yes.
Okay, can you go to the playground folder?
Yes.
Okay, oh cool. So let's open the first one, attestation.xml. It picks up from the data object we previously defined for a attestation, and examine how the TokenScript uses it. So I'll explain from the beginning to the end of the file. The file is small. It's only 39 lines long. So it starts with the token definition and the contract stuff, which contract is relevant to the token. And then it starts by defining an object class. The idea of it is ticket. It's on the line 3. And inside that object class, it provides a asn.x, which is an XML translation of asn.1. module. Here it is called schema, but it was an ASM.1 module. It describes a data object which can be signed and become a attestation with a attestation signing method that was discussed a few weeks back. For example, adding the signing algorithm and other bits of information to make it complete attestation. Sorry. So this is okay, right? You guys remember our previous discussion of how to make a data, turn a data object into a attestation, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then we have we end the definition of object class here. At this point, the TokenScript assumes that the user has the attestation. And for example, if the user is a mobile phone user, then the user have the attestation stored in the mobile phone memory. Note that the attestation doesn't have to be owned by the current user. For example, you might have someone else's attestation in order to do a transaction. For example, if you are buying a kitty from someone and that person is selling you at a certain price, that signed offer to sell the kitty is itself a attestation that is not owned by the user. So basically, the TokenScript assumes you have the attestation, and the attestation doesn't have to be yours. And then there is an next line is the attribute type, which is numero. Notice that this attribute type being defined here, it was actually first used in the attestation as the first element on line 5. So when we define a attestation, we don't define the attribute types. For example, where it is originated and how does the user see display the name of the attribute type. These are separate from the attestation itself. So from line 19 to line 26, these are the definition of the attribute type. This definition is a attribute of the token, not a attribute of the attestation. Although in this TokenScript is the same. So basically, this by saying attribute of the token, I mean this is a attribute you can access through token data in JavaScript. It's part of the token data, and then you observe that there is a token name. And the name, the translation, in this case, there's only one language version because numero is a symbol on line 21. And then we end the definition of the name. And then we start with origins. In this case, the origins is if it is the numero, the value of attribute numero comes from the attestation called ticket. And whose signer has to be this guy, identified by 0x24 plus blah, 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 blah. So suppose the user have 3 tickets. This would result in 3 numeros. And because numero is a special attribute type, because it's an identifier, then it means the user actually have 3 tickets. And then we go to the next attribute type on line 27th, where you see ID equal to redeemed. So redeemed is a token attribute that does not appear in the attestation. And you see in line 29, the English name of the field is called, the attribute is called redeemed. Then you have the origins. This attribute, redeemed, it's sourced from a function, Ethereum view function called redeemed on the contract ticket issuer. So what you do is the TokenScript engine would call that function on that contract by providing a single parameter, defined in the sequence, that is line 33, whose content is a numeric and type is Ethereum uint. So you see here, I use the same syntax to define a attestation and a smart contract API. And we also use extended the same syntax to define how this smart contract should be called. That is what is the value being passed to the smart contract function through this API. So the idea is, I have this idea that I wish to discuss with you guys, that I feel no matter if a data object is being passed to a smart contract or being passed as a variable in the smart contract, as a payload, or being assigned as a attestation, or being sourced from blockchain as blockchain truth in the form of Ethereum event, or should the same data object be obtained through a whitelisted API, a web service in the form of a JSON string. It doesn't matter which way you get the data object. The way data object is represented and defined in TokenScript stay the same. And I feel this is easier for data objects to go through various services or attestations or blockchain for integration purposes. So let's go to the next example, and then we will discuss both together, okay? So can we go to Playground and then look at event.xml? Guys, are we there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is an example of sourcing attribute from event. So here we have a contract, and then in the line 7, the data object class is defined inside that contract. Notice that previously object class was defined outside the contract. Here it is defined inside the contract. And then it the object class has the following data. This is an object class is the definition of data object. So inside there is a sequence, and they're followed by element. There are lots of different elements, each with a Ethereum type. And on line 18th, where a ENS name is defined. Again, this is an identifier, meaning identifier has two meanings here. Most prominently, identifier is the count of number of tokens. So if you have 3 unique identifiers, then you have 3 tokens. If there are 3 unique identifiers, if there are 3 tokens with the unique identifiers, then you have the same. Then there exists 3 tokens, and then the token name is ENS name by line 20. Then we have the origins, and unlike other attributes, this attribute originates from an event, and you can see in the line 25th, it refers to event name registered, which is defined in line 7. So notice that when we define line 7, we're simply defining a data object. The definition of data object is object class, and we don't define it as an event. It is simply used as an event. So that object is always like a standalone, and it can exist in the form of an event, or it can exist in the form of attestation, or even a JSON string returned by a trusted source. So continue from line 25th. You get this contract equals to register, and the filter equals to owner address, which means a TokenScript engine at this point will scan through all the events that is named registered. The events ID can be calculated from the object class definition. It will look at all the events on the contract register of the type name registered, and it will first, because name is a identifier, it will first drop all the events that has the same name except the last event. And in this case, last event dictates the real ownership of the ENS name. Then it applies the filter, which says owner equals to owner address. This is to find the ENS names that are relevant to the current owner. And then you get a single event being selected. And from this event, you can take the name element out, and that would be the value of attribute name.
In this case, would you not need to watch out for any name registered event that that was for a contract that you, well, for a name that you currently own as well? Because it could be that you're losing ownership, so you won't see the last event. Do you see what I mean?
Yes. So this is about how to source attribute from events, and
Yes.
that would be a and what you says will be a notification or an event to the engine to delete no token. So yes, this would not cover that. You are right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that still has to be dealt with, because TokenScript at this point is declarative. It defines what means what, and it has no instruction of how to deal with a situation where one of the token is transferred away from someone. And maybe there should be a way to do that, maybe. Yeah, good question.
I guess it's not important in this case, because I suppose if it's transferred, yeah, well, yeah, we still have to deal with it.
Yeah, we on the implementation, we still need to deal with it. So it's a question of whether or not we put that logic into a TokenScript. And it's you can see that if we don't declare such thing, if we don't declare what happens if the token changes ownership, TokenScript engine probably still can generate such event, because this piece of XML has provided enough data for the engine to know such thing happened.
It might be that it's not necessary, because if this refers to the 721 token that you get when you own an address, would that have been transferred out of your wallet when you lose ownership? I'm not sure exactly how it works, so it might not be relevant actually.
Yeah, we need to do something about that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't solve that problem. We still need to solve that problem. At this point, I was mostly looking at how to convey knowledge of a token and all the data related to that token to the engine, and not how the engine would be able to use that.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Carry on. Sorry.
Okay. I just finished. So I have an example of how data object is used for filtering the events. and how that object is used for making attestations, and how that object is used for getting return value from smart contract function calls. So yeah, this is just something that this is a playground asking for comment. Yeah, that's it. If you don't have comment, then I will further make another point. Can you open event.xml and attestation.xml, please?
Can you just go over explicitly what sequence represents? How does that make how does that affect the engine declaring the sequence?
It's an encoding structure. It's an encoding encoding thing. So in Ethereum, a event is encoded following the ABI format.
Yes.
And when Ethereum encodes data according in ABI format, it always encloses let's say if you have an event that has only one element, which is name, it will not be encoded as the event ID followed by the name. That's not how it's encoded. It's always encoded with a container called a sequence.
Okay.
And that's how probably not called sequence, but called like a union okay. In Ethereum knowledge. And in attestation, there's a similar convention. For example, in certificates like X509 or any ASN.1 encoded data, DER encoded. I mean, usually this kind of stuff I put in the sequence as well. So I simply replicate this structure because I notice similarity how ABI handles data and how ASN.1 handles data, and they both use something like that. So I simply took the ASN.1 terminology because they have a schema already defined for XML.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah. So you can probably argue that the outer sequence is not needed because there has to be one anyway, but I'm just following what was there. Yeah.
What if two different events generate instances of the same token?
Repeat, sorry?
What if two different events generate a new token?
I mean, you mean the creation of a new token depends on two events, one happening one after the other?
No, separate events. For example, you have one called name registered. What about, let's say, a transfer in event? Receiving a new ENS name.
So I'm talking about the situation where payment and delivery is done in separate transactions. So let's say you pay for a transaction and then you deliver it in a separate one event.
It doesn't have to be a separate one. It could be a same one. Well, one event, name registered, creates a new ENS name and tie it to a particular Ethereum address. Another event, perhaps transfer, ties an existing ENS name.
Okay. I see what you mean here. You mean
and
that
there could be more than one.
Yeah, you mean that the creation of the name token can be done through one of the two events.
Yes, two or more.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. If we do this, can we have multiple events and origins? Because origins were initially supposed to provide, let's say, you have an attribute type. You have an attribute whose value can originate from Ethereum smart contract function call or from event. But if you say two, is the relationship or?
Yes, because originally when we talk about multiple origins, it's more like a fallback. When the first doesn't work, it goes to the next.
But if you put two events, then it will be really complicated if it means either. I see. Good point. So can I just take note? I don't know.
Yes,
how to solve it.
Yes, I have one thought. Putting the events as part of the origin makes sense, but using it to represent instances of a token feels a bit strange. So what you're saying is if for the owner wallet, for the owner's Ethereum address, if it detects two name registered events, it will have two ENS names. This part feels a bit odd.
Can you say that again?
Using the events in origins to represent the layout of the attribute based on object class tag sounds good. But when we use the detection of the event to represent instances of the ENS name within the user's Ethereum address, this second part feels a bit strange.
Yes. So this happens only in the case when the attribute type is identifier. So because we only have one, which is name, which is identifier, it does happen. What you said does happen.
But we do it for attestation also. In the attestation example, when the user owns two attestations, you were saying that they will have two tickets.
No, if the user owns two attestations and each one of them has a different nominal is the identifier, then the user have two tickets.
Yes, so this is quite similar to how the events example work. By having two unique copies within origins, it generates two instances of the token.
So normally you would be able to use a get balance view call to a smart contract to obtain all the list of tokens.
Yes.
But that could be very expensive, and in case of ENS, they don't provide it at all. So there was Sangali who told me that other people are pissed off by this too, that the only way to find out if a token was created is through events, and there is no smart contract call to return all the list of events. But on the other hand, if you think about it, even if the smart contract doesn't have a get balance, which returns a long list of all the tokens, it's probably still good to have a mechanism of finding tokens, instances of tokens, without using that function, because that function is expensive, and that function doesn't exist in attestations. So the solution is to choose one attestation type and call it identifier.
Okay.
I'm not even sure if I'm answering the question, but I'm thinking maybe we're thinking at the same problem, right?
Yes.
Kind of, yeah.
Just feels a bit odd.
Yes, and it's a bit odd for a few reasons, not only this. So traditionally, you should be able, if you think about traditional directory objects, for example, which is quite heavily used in attestation as well. A directory object is identified by a attribute key value pair, or by multiple of them. So you can identify a directory object by name name equal to something plus date equals to something. For example, you can uniquely identify a object through two attribute types. And in the current schema, it seems not able to do so. So one idea is to simply remove the identifier equals to true, which is on line 18 in the event.xml. One idea is simply remove identifier equals to true, and then produce a special section which defines how do we find instances of how do we find instances? Yes. So imagine something is between contract, which is in 16th line, and attribute type, which is in 18th line 18th. Imagine something is there on the line 17th, which define how to identify the instances of a token.
Yes, that sounds a bit better, because then you can also add in filtering when you have cases where the tokens is transferred out, or if you have multiple incoming events that create instances of the token.
Which allows James Brown's issue to be solved neatly.
Yes.
That's right.
It seems to feel a bit better.
Yeah. Yes. So something will be done about this, and I will think about something to put into line 17th to identify the instances.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So if you open event.xml and the teststation.xml side by side, then you will notice in event.xml, like line 9, line 10, 11, and 12. In these lines, the data object element types are Ethereum string, Ethereum byte 32, Ethereum address. And in the teststation case, look at the teststation.xml, line 5 and 6. Then you see the types are ASN primary types, like integer and octet string. So if a data object is used like a cross, like a data object is used as an event or as ABI or as attestation or as a JSON string returned by the server, then the type will change. So you imagine you have a data object that can be used in all three scenarios. Then you might have something like line 6 of attestation.xml, where you have two types, or maybe 3 or 4 of them, to show how each element should be encoded in different contexts when used as a different thing.
So the different the context is
like a different
by the namespace.
Like in origins, basically, or in the transactions. So it's really that object is incarnated at the time it is being used, either as origin or in the transaction, or even in the creation of attestation, which we didn't define how to do that. So that object is innocently defined without which way it should be encoded. And on the moment it is at the moment it is being used at the context, like as origin of a attribute type, yeah, you can. Yeah, okay. So basically, objects, the data objects are defined without being specific whether or not it's an event or a attestation or a ABI to a smart contract call.
Does it mean that the TokenScript author has to be responsible and aware of which types are compatible?
If they use a data object in multiple different ways or different encodings or different contexts, one on the blockchain, the other on the web service, then they need to define multiple types for them. This isn't very good because it can be confusing. Yeah. But on the other hand, let's say a ticket. When you buy a ticket, an event will be created or attestation will be received. Depends on if you buy the ticket through blockchain or you buy a ticket through credit card, right? Yes. So having ticket defined 2 times is also error prone. So it's a choice of being error prone or being complicated.
Is it possible to invent new types for
or you can,
object class?
or you can say, sorry, or you can say that a ticket is a ticket, no matter if you obtained it through attestation by buying with credit card, or you purchase it through Ether and obtained it through an event. And it's the same ticket with the same data object, same structure. If a ticket have an additional value, let's say you have normal ticket, gift ticket, VIP ticket, then you have a VVIP ticket, very, very important person ticket, then the same change applies to attestation as well as Ethereum events, as well as the JSON string, suppose you want to connect to third-party services. Now, sorry, back to your question.
Oh, or is it possible to invent TokenScript specific types for the object class tag that automatically maps to the correct native type, depending on where it's used?
So you say that can we simply define one type and then internally internally change them so that the user don't have to be confused with different types?
Yes.
That probably will do. We need to think about how to do that though. For example, Ethereum address is more specific than ASN octet string, which is good. Because then we can use Ethereum address and we know it must be encoded in octet string. But on the other hand, there are start time, like UTC time, which doesn't have a agreed method to encode in Ethereum.
We can invent something.
Yeah, okay.
But these types might be easier. What might be difficult might be things like integer or floating point numbers, because of precision.
Oh, yes, you are right. Because Ethereum people like to encode traditionally fixed point float point stuff into fixed point stuff, and then use a string multiplier, not using the one of the IEEE methods to encode stuff. Basically, Vitalik doesn't want to use IEEE.
And also basic things like 32-bit versus 64-bit sign unsigned, they may not be compatible. I don't know if it works.
Yeah, because yeah, that's right. So your method, let's try that and figure out a way to map this data.
Okay.
So yeah, so that sounds like another meeting already. But this is just the thing. This is the thinking at the moment. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So still in playground stage. Yeah. Okay. So we still have 4 minutes.
Oh, one question. Should there be a way to map between object classes, or is that not necessary? For example,
I hope it's not
yeah.
necessary, but the bad programmers are everywhere. So they probably define object class and later use in some code, and then define a new one, which is very similar. Just look at how many different versions of the FIFA ticket contract that we have deployed on Ethereum. Someone might
but
have created.
even yes, but even within the system, within the same system, when an event is generated, the object class can be quite different from the one that's being passed around.
Why?
I don't know. Because they were not designed to be interoperable, maybe. They might
You
have been
mean
developed at
somebody
different
have
stages.
created a ticket contract who emits event in a different format than the object class that is signed as attestation?
Yes.
Damn it. People will do such a thing, right?
Yes, or maybe just one has an identifier, the other doesn't, which is pretty common.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's really difficult. We know that we probably need to define both, because as long as TokenScript is declarative, you need to get the engine understand events and attestations. So it has to be defined somehow, as long as you want to have declarative stuff, not let people code to TokenScript as JavaScript and handle all the logic separately. Yeah. So we probably need to think about it. I don't have an answer. By the way, when I look at ENS contract, there are 5 or 6 or 7 different types of event being defined, but only one is used. So they have had different ideas at different stages, and they didn't bother up to clean up their code.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So 1 minute left. Any questions? We are not going to publish this as a spec. This is early stage.
I have one question which might not be related. When you say the owner has attestations, but attestations, how does it get associated with the TokenScript file?
When you obtain a attestation, it will ideally the attestation will have a data object inside which has object ID, and we discussed previously whether or not we use OID like 1.2.3.4.5 to identify attestations and the object classes, or whether we don't do that, and that didn't conclude. Remember, we briefly discussed that, like having a unified scheme of identifying objects or unique IDs.
Yes. So this might not be relevant because maybe it's in the UI also. So for example, if I receive attestations for 2 tickets from you, I receive another 2 from James, and I only want to use 2 of them. Maybe it's a UI level thing.
Oh yeah. So which one is stored in your wallet and which one is, so both has to be transacted in order to be yours, okay? Or that they already applied it under a public key. If they applied it under a public key, you already have them. If they are transacted to you, then you observe the events.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So that's time's up. You guys are happy with this discussion?
Sounds good to me.
Yes. I might ask you a few questions tomorrow, but yeah.
Yeah, please. Yeah, okay. Okay. So talk to you guys later. Yeah.
Okay. Cheers.
Bye.
All right. Have a good day.